Can you build a justice center without raising taxes?
Mayor Greg Ballard confronts the issues he's facing in 2014, including a multi-million-dollar justice center proposal, a plan to fight violent crimes, a bid to win the Super Bowl, plus his political future.
Will you run for a third term?
And the unexpected answer.
Mark's going to kill me because he's never heard this before.
Our political insiders weigh in on the hot topics of the week, including the state's recent budget woes, the governor's education plan, and his panhandling here to stay. That and much more on this edition of Indianapolis This Week.
From RTD6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
I'm Rafael Sanchez. People want their streets plowed, their streets safe. The mayor of Indianapolis knows that public safety in 2014 will be his priority. That includes talk of a criminal justice center that will house everything from the prosecutor's office to the county jail. But his plate is also full with other issues, from same-sex marriage, mass transit, and his rising prominence in the GOP. We tackle all of those issues, but we begin with public safety. Can you build a justice center without raising taxes?
We think we can, and we want to somehow create a public-private partnership, try to figure this thing out. This is not something that we just threw out there. We've run some numbers. We've brought everybody on board who, for a long time now. This is not like the last 2 weeks. This has been going on literally for over a year, at least within our administration. People have been up on the 25th floor talking about this for a long time now, trying to move it to a certain place. And so we, when the sheriff thinks it can be done, and the courts think it can be done, and we think it could be done, and the private sector has been a part of this also, then now it's time to put it out there and say, hey, we think we can do this. Let's study this for essentially a year. We're going to start putting out. The first thing will be a request for qualifications to kind of narrow down the field of people who could possibly bid on this thing and see where it goes. You and the sheriff have not always seen eye to eye. Is this common ground for both of you on this issue? Oh, I think so. I think so, because he talked about saving taxpayer money. I give him a lot of credit for that, for saying that, because that's really what we're trying to do. He knows that his jail is inefficient, not necessarily because of what he's doing, but because of the way it's designed and what he has to do and all these multiple facilities and things like that. So I give him a lot of credit for this, and I give Judge Serto a lot of credit because he's doing some innovative things with the courts right now that I'm not sure people are talking about it so much, but he's also interested in the taxpayers, being efficient with the taxpayers' money, which is what we've always been about. I think you know that. So, as long as people are thinking like that, and then we can design a building that not only is efficient and it shows us that we're good stewards of the money, but hopefully, not going to promise this, but hopefully make a couple bucks if we can do that. Also through rent and maybe extra bed space that maybe the federal government would be interested in, that sort of thing. You've seen a number of sort of a spike in some really heinous crimes, out of the ordinary. Nonetheless, they've happened while you've been on the job. Sure. What will you do to sort of help your public safety officials deal with that moving forward? I think the city, generally speaking, is a compassionate city. All that said, I think it needs to be a little bit more targeted, and we have been talking to some people in the city of Indianapolis. Hopefully we'll be able to roll this out soon after the new year. But we've been talking to a lot of folks about what really needs to be done to target people who are, like you're talking about, who create these crimes that seem to have no conscience whatsoever, right? And we want to put a conscience in them. I still think, maybe it's just the optimist in me, I just think there's another way to look at public safety. I just do. And people come to me all the time and say, this program from this city and this program from this city, when we look at it, it's already been tried here, or it's already been done here, or something like that. There's just, there's always a short-term piece, and then there's a long-term piece. And I think every major city who is struggling with this issue, which is every major city, has to have a short-term piece and a long-term piece. The long-term piece is more difficult, but I would suggest to you that we are really good at the long-term piece when you look at what we've done with water and wastewater, when we look at so many things we've done, Eskenazi Hospital, we're looking long-term, right? We're not afraid to go after the long term, but there has to be a short-term piece also. And I just can't help but think that there's something there. There's no silver bullet on any of this, but you just can't turn the key and have it happen. It's a lot of work by a lot of people, but I'm hoping we can find something that's out there.
Was it difficult for you to make the decision regarding the same-sex marriage ban? Because when one thinks about some of the Republican agenda issues, some folks say that folks that support those kinds of social issues or go against them may not be conservative enough. Do you feel like, as a mayor, that you don't have that choice, that you have to be as broad as possible, pragmatic as possible, and just live by your own principle?
I think that last phrase was right. I have to live by my own principle. I tell people pretty candidly, I have to go to sleep at night. And I mean that sincerely when I say that. I'm doing what I think is right for the city of Indianapolis. I absolutely have to do that. And I think this is right. The phrase I keep using, as you may have heard me say, is what is the overriding government interest? Why does the government care? I mean, that's the point I can't get out of my head. I mean, what business is it of ours to try to regulate the personal primary relationship?
The day after you won your second term, the first thing you did, beginning that evening and into the next day, was you went to the legislature to talk about mass transit. And we're still talking about mass transit. Do you think 2014 will be the year that the legislature will consider some kind of proposal that would allow the citizens of Marion County and some of the other donut areas to vote on some sort of plan?
I can't predict the legislature clearly, but I will tell you, when the study committee got done, and a lot of people weren't thrilled with that, to be frank, because we've been studying it for a long time, right? But when they came out, I think with what the report, and I give Senator Miller tons of credit for this, because she does everything she does for the right reason and with the right heart. So I'm on board with her. When it came out, I saw that as an acknowledgement by the state legislature that something has to be done. That's how I read that. Now, I would suggest to you that's a quantum leap in thought for the state legislature, for the study committee to come out and essentially say, hey, something has to be done. We know the status quo is not important. So I think that's something to build on. Whether this is going to be the year, I don't know. I will tell you, we have to get better in mass transit in the city of Indianapolis. Not much question about that. How we do it can be the subject of debate, and I understand that, but I appreciate the fact that the state legislature came out with that study committee essentially saying, we understand you have to do more. You just have to persuade them.
So are we looking at other 2 or 3 or 4 different mayors before someone says,
no,
mass transit, that might be a good idea?
I don't think so. I hope not. I put it that way. I still think there's momentum for it, whether we can get there or not. I'm not so sure it'll be in 14 or 15, but I still think there's momentum for it, and I think there's an acknowledgement now by a lot of people that something more has to be done. And I will tell you, the people who are acknowledging that probably weren't there a couple of years ago. That's the change.
Your biggest success of 2013?
That's a great question. I think we've been building on a lot of things, to be honest with you. I don't think of one thing. I think of a continuing pattern. I think the fact that the city continues to build out physically, despite difficult economic times, is a major, major victory for the city of Indianapolis. And we're starting to get a lot of recognition right now for a lot of things that we've been doing, getting international recognition, getting national recognition. That part is nice, and I very much appreciate that, because what that does for us is allows Indianapolis to get a bigger name. But what we're doing physically in the city, continuing to do, when we have Cityway, when you have the Market Square piece, you look at the city market, right, and how vibrant that is right now. When you look at Rebuild Indy, when you look at Block 400, when you look at in the criminal justice complex, when you look at Eskenazi Hospital, when you look at all these things that continue to change the city physically, I think that speaks volumes. I mean, if you had to pick one thing, I'm not sure you want to pick one thing, but because I think it's a continuing pattern. But the Eskenazi Hospital is pretty nice.
Mayor Ballard is in a unique position, and today he has a warning for his national party and what he says he'll consider before running for a possible third term. And the answer? That we did not expect. The mayor goes into 2014 hopeful of the city's chances to win the Super Bowl bid, but he's concerned with his party's lack of involvement in big city politics. A new list came out listing all the mayors in the major metropolitan cities. You're the only Republican.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that.
Did you notice the list?
Well, I know that Indianapolis is the largest city in the nation run by a Republican. I understand that.
So what is the rest of the country not getting? And what is your party not doing in instilling that message then? And why is it that you are viable here, but in the other metro areas, that message is not selling?
That's a really good question, and the mayors have been talking to each other about that, but there's also, we have to work with the national committee, and you may have seen that I've been quoted a couple times recently in national articles, most recently in Bloomberg, and Scott Smith, who is the president of the Conference of Mayors this year in Mesa, Arizona, has been relatively blunt about this, that we think the national party has kind of ceded the cities to the Democratic Party, and we don't think that should be done. We think we have a good message to tell, but we have to be able to get our word out and be seen as viable people who can govern a city. And unfortunately, it seems like we have given up the cities in some regard, and I just think we have to, as a national party, we have to look at that.
Are we going to get the Super Bowl?
Good question. I don't really know. I'm pretty frank about this. You know, when another city builds a new public stadium, makes life difficult. But I'm very confident in Allison and her team putting together a great package. People know that Indianapolis can put on a Super Bowl. If it was up to the NFL staff, we'd probably have it tomorrow, but it's not them. It's the 32 owners, and they tend to reward that sort of thing. But all that said, we were not rewarded the first year available either. So I'm hoping that they understand what we're trying to do in the city of Indianapolis and how anxious we are to get it done again, and we'll put on a great show again.
Will you run for a third term?
Don't know yet.
What will it take to answer that question, besides a nosy reporter that's going to keep asking you over and over again the same question?
I get asked that many times every day, not a couple times a week. I get asked.
Have there been fundraisers? I mean, there's nothing. You've not been hiding that, you know.
No, I'm not.
It's not illegal. I mean, you've been doing your thing, but will you run for a third term?
Well, I'm not there yet. I mean this, it's a very personal decision. It really is. And I waited a long time last time before I made that call. Everybody assumed I was going to run again. That was not an assumption by Winnie and I. It was not at all. But we made that decision to go through it again. And so, you have to go through the campaign. But I'm being asked by, frankly, Republicans and Democrats to run again. I mean, a lot of people like the direction of the city right now. We seem to like the direction of the city. I got a great staff who wants to continue to do great things, so I'm going to have to put that all in the mix, along with how Winnie and I feel about it.
Is there anything else you want to do post being a mayor?
Rest.
Yeah, but you say that, but you're a guy that's always been very dedicated and committed. What else would you like to do if you were not mayor?
I don't know. I loved teaching. I love, in some way, making a difference in kids' lives. That sort of thing would be very, very fun, I think. Be very meaningful. There's a small part of me always, and Mark's going to kill me because he's never heard this before.
Oh, then I love it. Go ahead and tell me.
There's a small part of me that somehow wants to be a basketball coach.
All right. So, any team in particular?
No, I don't know what level, but high school or small college might be very entertaining.
All right. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of folks listening. And one more time, are you running for mayor for the third term?
Don't know yet. Stay tuned. All right.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Right, thanks.
We'll keep asking the questions. We sat down with the mayor at the Lily House, which is celebrating its 100th year. The historic home is on the grounds of the Indianapolis Museum of Art, which has extended its showing of the Matisse through Christmas due to popular demand. Our political insiders are next. Indianapolis Speak continues. Joining us now are political insiders, Republican Jennifer Hollowell and Democrat Laura Beck. Is the mayor, we just heard from him for about 12 minutes or so, and he talked about a third term. Not sure yet. Is he running already for a third term?
Well, first I have to say that I was in charge of the mayor's re-election campaign in 2011, and I still do work for him in a political capacity. Okay. So, in full disclosure, I think he's certainly very well positioned to run for a third term if he chooses to do that. As he said, it's a personal decision he hasn't made yet. But, what I can share with you is that voters in this city are still very happy with Mayor Ballard and his progress. He still has very high favorable ratings. They're happy with progress in the city. And frankly, his numbers are in line with the numbers that he had leading into that last re-election campaign. So I would say, for a variety of reasons and all the progress that he's continued to make, voters, he still has voters' confidence. And so should he make that decision, I think he'll have a very strong campaign.
Laura, do you have anyone in your camp that can actually mount a campaign and knock this guy out of the ballpark?
Well, I think on the Democrat side, we have a number of people who are emerging. I know that, there's been a lot of talk about Joe Hogsett, the U.S. Attorney. There has been some discussion as well. I know Ed Delaney, the state representative, has mentioned it. I know there's some other folks who've put their name out there, and we have a deep bench. I think that for Mayor Ballard, it is a very personal decision to run for a third term. I mean, running for a third term of anything is hard to do. And so I think that he does, he said he has a good team in place. He does. He's got a good team in the mayor's office. He's clearly got a good team with Jen. So, I think we as Democrats realize that there is a path and there is a way to do it. And for Mayor Ballard, I think the biggest challenge in any administration going into a third term is that this upcoming year, 2014, it has to almost be flawless, really. I mean, you cannot make a mistake. And politics changes things so quickly and so often. So, there are, going into when Bart Peterson was probably sitting in 2006, I mean, it probably looked like a slam dunk. So life changes, things change. So we'll see.
The issue? Because for Bart Peterson, it was property taxes. And Marion County is a county in which Democrats by the numbers rule. He's the only mayor in the country, a big city, that's a Republican. How could that be?
I
asked you that question because it's your party.
It is our party.
Why are you not winning this seat?
Well, I think one of the things as we move into the next election cycle into 2015, there's been a lot of talk about sort of this two Indianapolis, these two Indianapolises. We've got a city where we have, to Mayor Ballard's credit, we've made some really significant strides in terms of development. We had a Super Bowl, but at the same time, we're seeing these really endemic and systemic issues with poverty and a lack of education and crime, and that is an issue that really impacts everyone. And I think we saw that with those Northside home invasions, is that crime really does impact everyone. And so the mayor really, as a mayor of a city, has an opportunity to really step out on those issues. And he is, I would say, he's poised to do that. He's got a good public safety director. He's got, a deputy mayor for education. But it's, do you take this opportunity and when do you do it? Because the last thing you want are people to be afraid.
How does he maintain his edge? Quickly.
Well, what I was going to say, I mean, part of the reason why we have a Republican in Indianapolis, and there aren't maybe in other cities, is, I mean, it's unique to Mayor Ballard. Other people could do the same thing, but, I mean, he's very focused on progress. He's focused on working with everyone, working in every community. A lot of people know he's everywhere in every neighborhood, and on a variety of issues. And he's also, I mean, he is a moderate Republican by many standards, and so he has gotten a lot of appeal and support from Democrats, and that was part of why why he was reelected in 2011. And frankly, right now, he still has a lot of support from Democrats, and he has Democrats who come up to him on a daily basis and say, "I really appreciate what you're doing," or "I appreciate this stand you took, and I hope you will run again," and they're comfortable with him.
90 seconds. At the State House, we saw lower than expected projections on revenue. Is the governor's agenda already doomed even before January begins?
I don't think so at all.
Well, we have a supermajority. I think that helps him a little bit. It didn't help him last year.
So you don't think so at all?
I don't think so at all. And I think what he did this week, I mean, he's taking important steps to make sure that we're in a strong fiscal situation and that we have a structural surplus, which is important for a variety of reasons. And the things that he was proposing, some of them are about the how, things that were passed last year on road funding, and then on education, that's planning for the future, which again has a lot of appeal, across the state.
I think one of the things he's doing is, I think that it's somewhat challenging, is because so much of what he's talking about, I feel, are position papers from the Republican Governor Association and things like that, especially as it relates to charter schools. That may not be as popular outside of Indianapolis in the urban areas. But I think it's a challenging case really for any governor to make, to say revenue's falling, but we're going to cut taxes here and here and here. And it didn't work last time.
Yes or no? Will we see a panhandling ordinance in 2014? Yes or no?
I'd ask the Democrats. I mean, the mayor is certainly leading on this issue.
Yes or no?
And wants to see
Yes or no?
Yes.
Only Laura's team knows.
Only the crystal ball will know.
The conversation between our insiders always continues on Twitter. You can see their Twitter handles and follow them throughout the week on our website, theindychannel.com. A major event celebrating the accomplishments of women in central Indiana will bring together over 900 people to the Circle City. The Indianapolis chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners will host their 10th annual Visionary Awards. Deb Oates, Erin Smith here with me. Tell me about this great amount of women that just come together and do great things in our city, Deb.
Well, let me tell you about the Novel Women, the diverse community of women businesses here in the city of Indianapolis. Absolutely great organization, phenomenal women. We are the #1 in the chapter, in the city, the state, nationwide. We're #1.
You got it going on.
And we do have it going on, but we have women, very powerful women of influence who understand advocacy, who use the tools of Novel to get to the next level in hiring, and it's just a phenomenal group of women.
And at this Visionary Awards, Erin, what can we expect? You're going to honor some just great women.
We are. We're going to be honoring 4 amazing women, or 4 amazing folks. So you'll have to be there to find out who those people are going to be. But it's just an event you don't want to miss. A lot of time and planning goes into this, and we are going to have just a great time. You won't want to miss it on December the 17th.
The event is on the 17th. For more information, we have it all posted on our website, theindychannel.com. Come out and enjoy a great event. Thank you for watching this week. Have a great week.